On the evening of November 4, 2023, Australian Prime Minister Albanese and his delegation arrived in Shanghai.
Alongside him were Foreign Minister Huang Yingzhan and Trade Minister Don Farrell. This marks the first visit to Chinese soil by an Australian Prime Minister in over 7 years. This journey has also been dubbed as the
ice-breaking trip by observers. In fact, if we look at the recent actions of both China and Australia in the past few months, it becomes clear that the relationship between the two nations has not only broken the ice but is gradually warming up. In April of this year, under the framework of the World Trade Organization, China and Australia engaged in friendly consultations to resolve the barley anti-dumping measures dispute and reached a consensus. In August, China's Ministry of Commerce announced the termination of the more than 3-year-long anti-dumping and anti-subsidy tariffs on Australian barley. In September, during the ASEAN meetings in Jakarta, Premier Li Keqiang met with Prime Minister Albanese. In October, the National Gallery of Australia returned 3 precious cultural artifacts to China. This marked the first time the National Gallery of Australia has returned cultural artifacts to China in over 50 years of diplomatic relations. On October 24, Australia announced the conclusion of the security review of the Darwin Port project and declared that a consensus had been reached in the previous WTO dispute. These developments not only make people optimistic about the cooperation between China and Australia but also showcase a new atmosphere presented by the Australian government after taking office. However, at this moment, many might wonder why Australia, as a member of the Five Eyes Alliance, should be actively aligning with the United States against China. So why are they choosing to break with tradition? There are, of course, reasons for this. In this video, we will discuss the fluctuating relationship between China and Australia and cover the following topics. First, the new Prime Minister, Albanese. Second, what constitutes a healthy China-Australia relationship? Third, the period of cooling in China-Australia relations. Fourth, pressure from Europe and America and the warming of China-Australia relations. The new Prime Minister. First, let's welcome Prime Minister Albanese to the stage. He's a leader with quite a legendary background, and his life story could easily be the plot of an exciting TV drama. Albanese's mother, Marianne, of Irish descent, met an Italian waiter on a cruise ship from Australia to the UK in 1962. Afterward, they went their separate ways without any further contact. However, Marianne discovered she was pregnant and gave birth to Albanese the following year. To raise her child, Marianne worked as a cleaner, lived in low-income areas, and even battled rheumatoid arthritis. In the end, they could barely make ends meet, relying on Marianne's disability allowance. In the midst of poverty, Albanese grew up, believing his father had died in a car accident until 2009 when, as the Minister of Transport at the time, he, with the help of many, was able to reconnect with his father. By that time, his mother had already passed away 7 years earlier. These experiences of adversity shaped Albanese into a resilient individual, someone deeply concerned with the well-being of the general public rather than elusive ideals. In the 2022 elections, Albanese led the Labour Party, which hadn't been in power for nearly a decade, in a contest against the Morrison government. At that time, due to a poor response to the pandemic, a pro-America foreign policy stance, and various lingering social issues, Morrison's approval ratings had plummeted. Albanese, on the other hand, with his pragmatic and moderate approach and the promise of bringing a better future to the people, made a remarkable comeback and emerged as the ultimate winner. He also became the first government leader in Australian history without British lineage. Upon his election, unity became Albanese's primary goal. In his victory speech, he stated, "I want Australians to unite. I want to seek our common goals, promote unity and optimism, not fear and division." Furthermore, Albanese has hinted several times at improving relations with China and emphasized, "If China extends an invitation for me to visit, I will accept it." Healthy China-Australia relations. Next, the healthy development of China-Australia relations is what the people desire. Not long ago, the Lowy Institute for International Policy conducted a public opinion survey on China-Australia relations, where 56% of the respondents welcomed the thawing of relations between the two countries and hoped for a restoration of high-level political interactions. Similarly, the Australia-China Relations Institute at the University of Technology Sydney, UTS, conducted a survey among 2,000 Australians, where 61% of the participants supported the continued development of China-Australia relations and wished for the government to steer towards a pragmatic approach. Different organizations and diverse respondents all arrived at the same conclusion, maintaining a strong China-Australia relationship in a pragmatic manner. The people can see things clearly. For a long time, China has been Australia's largest trading partner. Australia has continuously exported energy, minerals, agricultural products, and seafood to China, providing the country with a steady source of income. Morrison government freeze period. But everything changed from 2019 onward. After the Morrison government came to power, it consistently propagated the China threat theory and wholeheartedly engaged in the Quad security dialogue with the United States, Japan, and India. It even unabashedly established a anti-China club despite its own capabilities and public opposition. The reality has been harsh for Morrison. Under his repeated anti-China actions, the relationship between the two countries once came to a standstill, impacting Australia's exports of minerals, alcohol, barley, and beef. Domestic citizens voiced their grievances. Neighbouring New Zealand couldn't stand idly by. In December 2020, New Zealand's Foreign Minister, Nanaia Mahuta, voluntarily suggested that she could help facilitate a ceasefire between China and Australia. In January 2021, New Zealand's Trade Minister, Damien O'Connor, in an interview with the American broadcasting company's business channel, gave a direct answer regarding Australia's situation, advocating showing respect to China. Surprisingly, the Morrison government not only refused to heed this advice, but also displayed irritation, making it clear that it was none of New Zealand's business to meddle in Australia's affairs. Albanese government pressure and warming. Time has passed, and 2 years later, Morrison resigned with a heavy heart, making way for Albanese, who assumed office. The new government set aside its pride and prejudice, and actively sought cooperation with China. Within a few short months, there were immediate and remarkable effects in the economic and trade sectors between the two countries. In the first half of 2023, Australia's exports to China amounted to 102.473 billion Australian dollars, marking a 22.37% year-on-year increase. Deception and exploitation from the United States have dealt a heavy blow to Australia at this time. In recent years, the United States has consistently pursued its Indo-Pacific strategy to contain China successfully. American politicians occasionally tried to enlist Australian authorities as frontline troops. During Morrison's tenure as Prime Minister, he professed loyalty, hoping to secure a piece of the pie from the United States. Banning Huawei from participating in the 5G network construction, signing the AUKUS security agreement with the United Kingdom and the United States, and threatening to sanction Chinese companies. As Australia followed the path of the United States, it only moved further away. However, the results yielded little more than empty promises. In April of this year, Biden announced his upcoming visit to Sydney in the following month, and the Albanese government meticulously prepared for the annual summit of the Quad Security Dialogue, eagerly anticipating Biden's visit. But on the eve of the trip, Biden surprisingly stood them up, cancelling his visit to Australia, leaving Albanese heartbroken. To make matters worse, ABC News seemed to think that Albanese hadn't been hurt enough, publishing an article titled "How Biden's Debt Ceiling Battle Messed Up Albanese's International Affairs," delivering another painful blow to Albanese's already fragile heart. Even doing business with the European Union proved to be disheartening. They had hoped that the EU, for the sake of playing the middleman, the United States, would sign a free trade agreement, cancel tariffs, expand quotas, and facilitate Australian agricultural exports to Europe. However, the Europeans didn't buy into this plan at all, setting stringent conditions and sending Albanese packing. Consequently, 5 years of negotiations went down the drain. So, it seems that this American card they had in hand wasn't of much use. Hence, Albanese's visit to China came into the picture. Throughout the last few years, Australia's China policy has been inconsistent. However, China has consistently maintained an open attitude, welcoming Australia, embracing Australia, and sincerely creating conditions for win-win cooperation between the two sides. Look, this is how a great nation behaves. This forms such a stark contrast with some countries. Faced with reality, more countries that once firmly followed the United States should be able to wake up. In international affairs, they should maintain their strategic autonomy rather than becoming pawns for the ambitions of certain major powers to achieve hegemony. This is the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. We genuinely appreciate your support.